Hello and welcome to OvalEdge's amazing LinkedIn Live today. My name is Joanna. I'm a solutions engineer here at OvalEdge. And today I'm joined by the woman, the myth, the legend, my mentor and friend, Teresa Ansick.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Welcome, Teresa. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing good. Well, I haven't done Wordle yet, so I'm
Me neither. It's been a
hoping that I
busy
can
morning.
maintain my, 7-day streak.
Yes, I know. I haven't done Wordle. I haven't done connections. Aside from that, though, we're doing well. So today we're going to be talking about cost of inaction. I'm really grateful to have you here to have this discussion with us, Teresa. I want to mention before we get started to our audience, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Please feel free to ask questions during this discussion. You can add them in the chat box there in the comments, and we will have a time for Q&A at the end of this discussion we're about to have. So thank you guys for being here. We're really excited to have you all. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So we are talking today about the cost of inaction. And my first question for you, Teresa, with all of your experience in data governance and strategy, I want to know, when we're talking about cost of inaction, are we talking about return on investment? That's something that comes up a lot is what's the
Yeah.
difference between cost of inaction and ROI? Can you speak to
Yeah. A
that?
lot of times, especially when there's an IT investment, they want to know what the return on that investment is going to be over the long
Mhm.
run. And sometimes that's really elusive when it comes to data governance because first off, there are so many different dimensions of data governance.
Right.
And just having that core solution is going to have a return value, but every time you expand your functionality, there's also a return. It gets difficult to pin down because some of the items are pertaining to the load of non-value added
Mhm.
activities that you're currently carrying. And a lot of times that is not well known to the executive teams.
Right.
So we've got, we've got Seattle here. Hi, Seattle. We've got a lot of people that are calling your BI team and saying, "Hey, where did you get this metric? What does this mean? Or how come this number on this report doesn't match this number on this report?" And
Mhm.
that takes a lot of effort to maintain that. And those non-value added activities continue to compile every time you add a new asset into your ecosystem.
Mhm.
There are other things too, like the amount of time it takes for you to upgrade your application and maintain your uh, data assets, health and well-being while upstream changes are happening. And sometimes that takes a lot of load on your team. And then when you do upgrade an asset, and I've seen this more than once, you
Right.
spend the next 3 months repairing the drift that has happened on your data assets. There is a value to the level of confidence that your data consumers have. There's a
Mhm.
value to your reputation if you go down the scary path of, your data breaches and things like that. So, and a lot of people really focus on that, but there's so much more that's involved. The struggles with your third party data can be mitigated quite quickly when you're using data governance. So
Right.
those are the things that make it difficult. So whenever you talk about the return on a value, I always try to include the cost of inaction. What is it costing you right now to maintain that load? What will it continue to cost in the future if
Mhm.
you are not understanding and starting to move towards a data governance model that maintains data as an asset in your organization?
Wow. Yeah. No, that really helps, I think, summarize it, right? We're talking about beyond a dollar amount with return of
Yes.
investment, right? Our return on investment, we're talking about so much more than that. I think you mentioned confidence and, um, you know, overall just trust in the data that we're using. But I want to drill into that a little bit more. Can we talk a little bit more about, some of the effects of cost of inaction, maybe from more of a general um, standpoint? So we talked about confidence. I think you mentioned
Yes.
poor decision making. Um,
Yeah. 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 Well, some of the specific things that data governance is going to do is help you curate your reports, your reporting assets that you're going to hold in value. And you're going to commit to maintaining the health and well-being of those reports in governance and communicating. So if you have a lot of reports, and we crawl the report area, and there's usually hundreds more than what you're using, because we are not doing a good job of retiring tech debt. And it's okay. Nobody's asked us to do it before. Sometimes it's like, you're showing some of the things that you don't really want to get into, but having those reports around, and the risk that you take of somebody picking that report up and running it, and, and it may not come back with the right number. It may be broken. It shouldn't be out there. There's a risk to that. Specifically on the technology side, being able to say, hey, I want to move the server to the cloud, and be able to know what's on that server.
Right.
So that you can effectively say, you know what, here's the connection strings, here's the ETLs, here's the impact, and you'll be able to move that server to the cloud with a speed to market approach. Developing your assets is going to be a lot faster, because all of those non-value added activities become value added activities, and you're memorializing things in that centralized location. So you are able to enjoy the transparency from your security team, your BI team, your business team, that can tell you what this means when that data was born. Where is it being born in your data ecosystem, and really having that full picture of that ecosystem. So that everybody is contributing to and drawing from the centralized area. There's a lot of picking up the phone and trying to figure out where does this mean, and opening reports and reading the code, and then explaining the code to the customer and things like that. That should be a thing of the past.
Right, absolutely. No, I think that helps just paint the picture really well. And even what you were saying before about cost of inaction, meaning it's kind of the load of non-value added activities, right? So it can affect our organizations, companies across the board. And I want to get into kind of even more specifics now, if we can transition to, can you talk about some industry specific cost of inaction examples that you've seen or heard of or understand? I know we were talking the other day even about like a data breach that happened in April at some healthcare organization in Massachusetts, and they had something like 2.3 million people,
Massive, yes.
But yeah,
and
a breach of data there is.
Healthcare data is really important, and some of the regulatory requirements, I think, in the next near future are going to get very, very intense with being able to get into the health industry. And I know we talked to Sue last time on from Delta on the banking industry. And I know that for banking industries, there are thresholds. And when you get to a certain level, you fall under a new category of regulatory requirements. And so we have a lot of banking industry customers, and those that are getting started when they're smaller in data governance I'm watching it in live action, how they're able to move into that higher level of regulatory accountability with grace. And it's really something to see. And those are the ones that are going to do it more quickly, more cost effective, and fully auditable. And so they're actually enjoying that as they're growing. So those that are not moving into data governance, or those that are moving into, and I'm mentioning the comments, those that are moving into data governance doing the bare minimum because the auditors are asking for it, but they're not really understanding what data governance is and how it's actually a huge benefit to your organization. One of the things that I like to tell people is think about how your finance team is and how you can create a profit and loss and send that, whether you're public or private, how important it is to have that information rolled up. You could forego that and write checks and make deposits, but imagine what it would be if you didn't have your month-end reporting and all of it rolling up into your general ledger, and it would leave a gap. It's going to feel that way with data. I think, in the next 10 years, where it will feel like a gap. And hopefully in the slides that we're going to talk about in a little bit, it'll bring that point home a little.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into that solution. Yeah, no, I think the banking one definitely hits home. The healthcare one, I worked in healthcare before I came over to OvalEdge, and just I think we've talked about this a lot, the different metrics that you can have. I know you have some real experience with that too.
Yeah.
Having,
for instance,
go ahead.
in the hospital field, I was working with, there was 8 or 14 different hospital locations, and one of the common metrics in the emergency department was length of stay. And when we got into it, they were all being rolled up to the top CEO, and they were making multi-million-dollar decisions based in, and even smaller decisions, staffing, equipment, whether or not they were going to extend the building. And at one location, the length of stay didn't start until the first clinical contact, and the other location was starting their length of stay at the insurance check-in. And then the checkout was at different. So we ended up with 3 or 4 different ways that it was being calculated and then rolled up. And when you bring these things to their attention, it's like alarming and shocking. And that's really, it was, a moment, it was like they were all in on data governance at that point.
Right.
So being able to provide that consistency is what data governance is all about. Being able to take that field on a report and go upstream and say, here's the metric, and bring that transparency to the report level again, so that you are providing a high level of confidence and questions are easily asked. And we have a report owner and a steward if you want to reach out to someone particular with a question.
Yeah. I think the word that keeps coming to mind for me is just intentionality. Data governance means intentionality around your data from its genesis, right? From where it enters in most cases, or in a lot of cases, versus having more of that reactive response to something like a data breach, or now we have all, like you were mentioning with baking, now we have these regulatory reporting, new standards that we have to keep up with, but our compliance and security efforts are lacking, or it seems like the intentionality behind data governance is key to that cost of an action piece that we're discussing here.
And the other thing that comes up a lot is that people have a different vision of what data governance is. So some of the first things as a strategist that I do is level set what is data governance, so that we're all working from the same understanding and how it works in an organization. So some people think that data governance is IT governance, where it's really the controls, and other people think that it's just the business glossary for the business and the terms, and that's it. I didn't even know it was this bigger thing. So I spend a lot of time educating on the data governance as a whole, and what is data as an asset.
Yeah, let's look at that, because I know you've mentioned that a couple of times, data as an asset, and I'd really love to talk more about the solution. We've talked about there's obviously a cost of an action, and having non-value driven kind of actions within your organization. So the inverse of that, I'm guessing, is what you've been saying here, is treating data as an asset. And I think you sent me a visual here, so I'll pull that up.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of those big conversations, and it's like, data is an asset. We have data, and we have our reports over here, and it's an asset. But what does it really mean? And let's really get in, and it's present to what that means. So we created this as a guide, and this is just a sample of what it means. But we know where that data is introduced into our ecosystem. Why? Because we've brought all of our data ecosystem into a tool. We know the formulas that are used for metrics. We know how it is used on reports. We know who to direct our questions to, because we've got owners and stewards of reports, owners and stewards of the data catalog, and owners and stewards over the business glossary terms. We protect its privacy. Can you check that box? We publish a complete definition. We manage and confirm the quality. We have standards for its transportation. We use it consistently between assets. And there are more boxes that could be added to this. So this really gets people to understand, oh, we've got Paris on the call. Hello, Paris. Not Paris Hilton. It was Joanne from Paris. But we have this data as an asset conversation. And when I bring things up like this, I ask, how many of these boxes can you check? How do you know that when data is coming into your organization and the wall of data is getting higher and wider with every day at an organization? It's really about meeting the data at the wall and identifying the definition, the handling standards, security, quality, and marking that as a critical data element for everyone else. Because a lot of the items that are at the wall are not necessarily critical to your organization.
That makes sense. With data as an asset here, and I think that it's pretty clear what you're saying of really treating it as an important, invaluable tool and asset to your company, right? I think that the concept is self-explanatory, but the benefits of it are so helpful to really drill into.
Right.
And from your perspective, how have you seen that we can make sure that all of these boxes get checked?
It's interesting because when we talk about data as an asset, it really helps people to understand, oh, it's not what I was thinking, because this is a lot different. So I was thinking it was just a catalog and definitions, and then where on the reports are the definitions. And a lot of data governance tools were built to solve that problem. But when you look at this, you start seeing, oh, it's a lot more than that. It means we're going to be interconnected. And yes, data as a product is on here as, number one, which is a very good goal. Thank you, Annie. So we want to go to the next slide where we talk about, oh, my light just went off. The next slide where we talk about why code and metadata is at the center of your tooling. Okay. So when you talk about, I'm going to do a little plug for OvalEdge here. When you bring in your metadata, what is metadata? That's another one that I like to level set. Metadata is going out and collecting all of the objects in your data ecosystem. So when we ingest the metadata from your data ecosystem, it's telling me that you have these servers. These servers have these schemas contain these tables, and these tables contain these fields. So now you can get a picture of your data ecosystem. When you bring in the code, so that's going to build your data catalog. When you bring in the code, that is going to build your lineage. So if you look at the center of that, the code and the ecosystem being present in your tool allows you to strategically build your business glossary. And that is the core of your data governance. Now that you have that, you are plugging in all of the other functionality. So you can check the data discovery box. You can check the privacy and compliance box. Your regulatory and compliance people, your data related policies are plugged in. Your self-service tools are well explained where users can get what they need. So you've got all of these components that are contributing to and drawing from that data ecosystem that sits at the center of the tool. So you can see that, I like to use these two slides because it really does bring a lot home, and hopefully it's resonating with anybody who's watching here today. Let me know if that resonated with you Stefan, yes, dealing with data governance. So when you talk about this, start from here, data as an asset, and where are we with data as an asset? And here are the ways that we interact together in data governance. Then bring in, here's what is currently happening. Can we afford not to eventually get to this place? I want to encourage some things that I've done, which is my BI team came up with a cost per report. And I challenged the BI team and said, hey, how much does it cost for a report that has one metric and 4 items on it? And they were like, what? I don't know. We had fun with it, made a game out of it, but we settled on about $9,800 per report is what it costs to build a report. There was a lot of things that were thrown in there. So you've got a developer, you've got a BI analyst, you're taking capacity just so you got staff. Now you've got a development environment to maintain. Then you send it to stage, you QA it, and then it goes to production. So that's expensive. It's not just 4 elements, and you have to find the 4 elements, and so that is expensive. So if we can reduce these costs for creating a report with data governance, what would that look like? And then and it's different for every ecosystem. So if you take small bits to show that value for where you can come up with a formula or can come up with a general, how many questions is your team fielding? How painful are your application upgrades? And how much would data governance impact that? You can really bring it to tell the story of data governance at your particular organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think this visual is really helpful for me. I know at OvalEdge we have so many of these tools that you're seeing on the outside, but explaining it in that everything starts at the metadata layer, right? When you're working with the tool to be able to help with that data governance and what's built from there. I think that just paints a picture, right? Because if you don't start with your data catalog and your business glossary, a lot of times you end up discovering data issues or dealing with cost of inaction at that consumption layer, right? And we're talking more at the inception layer, right?
Right. So we're talking about finding the source of the information, where it's coming in for the first time. And that's how you help plug in your data quality. So if I have a term, and it can be something as mundane as contract ID, what type of contract, we want to make sure our terms aren't too vague, but it's coming in on Salesforce. And we want everyone to know it's coming in over at Salesforce. It is not a contract ID that we assign ourselves. It is assigned to us. And by the way, the first 2 characters mean this. And now everybody knows in your organization who they can call and have a broader understanding of your contract IDs. Contract IDs are oftentimes sent over to 45 other fields in your data ecosystem through interoperability. Developers are oftentimes saying, well, where should I pull this from? Where's the best place to pull this from? Now we know where the best place is. Is it in the data warehouse? Yes or no? Can we add it to the data warehouse? Let's take a look at the importance rating. So your backlog, you're more strategic.
Yeah.
You're able to attach to those items what you need for regulatory reporting, so that if people are going to make changes, they know that we need to have a broad conversation and communicate across the whole organization on this, because it's going to impact our regulatory reporting, and you don't want to mess with that. So that's the kind of interconnectedness that good data governance provides an organization that's going to cut down on your non-value added activities.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that that really, really hits home for probably so many of our viewers here today. Even just the point you're making here at the end too, of the visibility that having even the participation of a tool in your data governance efforts and having a structure, like one we have here at OvalEdge. Obviously, we're biased with that, but being able to have that structure and that visibility into your data really leads into every other area of governance within your organization.
Exactly. And you'll notice that if you have looked across the field of tools that are out there, there are some that were early emergers that started by solving one of these outer ring problems. They built their tool based on one of these plugins on the outside for functionality, and they're
Okay.
backing into data governance. You'll see tools that are like, hey, if we add a data catalog to this, it's now a data governance tool too. Or
Yeah.
they end up trying to cobble together different tools and use interoperability to solve the problem. But when you have a single tool that has got metadata and source code at its core, everything becomes possible. And that is enlightening. Not only that, but when Sharad started to solve this problem, he recognized early that code was and metadata was at the center. And
Right.
the functionality that exists is far advanced over many of, I would say all of our competitors, but the different functions that each one of these items require are well underway. And it's not a struggle, and it does have full transparency.
Yeah, transparency, huge, right? With cost of inaction. It's huge to give that back to our data users. And
Yes.
no,
Yes.
this is really great stuff. I know we have some questions here, so maybe
Yeah.
are we ready to move into that? Want to see if we can answer some
Sure.
questions?
Yeah. I've been taking a look at some of them, and Bethany brings up a good point about having items and they change the field name and they have different definitions, or it's additional derived data that needs to be explained. And derived data is born sometimes in the data warehouse. So the data warehouse developers need a business owner that's going to explain the definition of this derived field. And if you've changed the name of it along the way, you want to be able to get a tool that can manage that. And you can clearly see that in your lineage. So that is some of the complexity that is removed. It was called this over here, and now it's called this. Yes, the name of the field is contract ID, but that's too vague. Here's what it's actually. It's this type of contract, and here's all the things that we know about it. I also have several global customers that have more than one language. So the field is sometimes written in English, sometimes it's French, sometimes it's Dutch.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are struggling with that transition. And so because we allow for such phenomenal customization to meet so many of these challenges, we have now got the ability to embed those translations in and relate those items to one another. So you've got the ability to track your synonyms and create that where it is consistent, at least transparency. And once we've called it out, then we work towards consistency.
Oh, love it.
Good
Thank
points.
you so much, Bethany, for that point. We have someone else here, Mahesh, who brought up a good suggestion, and I wanted to see your thoughts on it. Saying organizations should practice conducting the data value realization assessment. What are your thoughts on that?
They should practice. Different organizations have different meetings, and there are a lot of different assessments out there. I've worked with companies that have had very, very extensive assessments that Accenture and Deloitte do a fantastic job on. And then it provides you the roadmap and what you should work towards, so forth. But not everyone has the ability to go in and conduct those assessments. Some of them are simple, some of them are extensive. There's a lot of them that are out there you can find. You should look at them all, play with them, find one that you think that you can do that's going to provide you value in the long run.
That's great. We got another question here from Kevin Sands. He asks,
Hey,
I know you know him, so can you explain the high risks when the company only allows doing the bare minimum as opposed to proper execution in data governance?
Yes. Well, there are high risks. You're going to get so far. There's two types of companies that I see quite often. And one of them says, we have to have data governance policy because we're being audited and it's on the audit sheet. And so we need a policy. And so we hired one person to come in with data governance, but they don't have the broader understanding of data governance or the money that they're not saving or the value of it overall. So that is when it's really about trying to get the attention and the understanding in the executive layer. And so you're risking a lot with that approach. That person, that poor person that took the job that to be one person or two people bringing in data governance, they're not going to have very much success. And then you kind of focus on creating a choir within your organization of other people that understand data governance. I did have a really great use case experience once when the leadership of a large pizza organization contacted me and said, listen, we're at the executive level and we know we need data governance, but we're not really sure what it is or how to lead it. Can you just spend 6 weeks with us and show us what it is? And I was like, oh my gosh, if only every company started like that. They were enthusiastic, they were jazzed up, they were on the same page, they knew where they wanted to get started, they were going to empower their teams, and they're doing a phenomenal job today. So great question, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is probably a little bit of a follow-up for that from Stefan. He's kind of bringing up the point, maybe this is an obvious answer, but sometimes it seems difficult to get aligned in the organization.
Yeah.
When it comes to, so what would your suggestion be for an organization to get aligned? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I am so passionate about, and an area where you start understanding how to get everyone aligned by creating that roadmap. And Stefan, there's in the academy at OvalEdge.com, we talk about creating a roadmap, and there's a roadmap that you can download. So the first foundational things in creating a strategy is around getting your charter document. Where are you anchoring your program? And what are your priorities for your organization? We're going to focus first on data privacy, or we're going to focus first on getting our assets curated and our business glossary. Thank you, Shilpi. I know that's you behind the link. Yes, go to the Academy at OvalEdge. We've got samples of roadmaps. That the charter needs to be changed only by an executive sign off, and that's going to help us keep our focus. So the enemies of data governance: focus and chaos. So hello, Nigeria. So the enemies, and you want to use the charter, the roadmap, the roles and responsibilities to really set the stage and avoid chaos and maintain your focus on what you're trying to do. You want to know and be very sensitive to having people running your program that are already maintaining their full-time job and they're not dedicated. We're just trying to do the best we can. So if that's the case, and a lot of programs start off like that, it happens and there's nothing wrong with it. But what I sometimes see is they want this part-time effort to come back with full-time results. So we want to talk a lot about capacity and the types of activities in order to plug everyone in. So there's an initial investment, and then you get all that delicious savings.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you for that question. We've got one more question, maybe a couple more questions here. If anybody else has some comments, enter them in the comment section. This one comes from Jamie. He's asking which group ought to lead or drive data governance within an organization.
Oh, good question. I get called in, and sometimes it's being led by the risk and compliance team that's trying to get data governance off the ground. Sometimes there's a couple of people on a team and they know what it is and they got a little bit of budget and they bought a copy of OvalEdge and they're just trying to inspire and get traction. It can be grassroots, and then there are organizations that start at the center, build out a data governance team that's fully staffed. So good.
Mhm.
So which group ought to lead? All of them. Wherever you can start, I say start. But if you're asking me where data governance should be driven from, I would say as centrally between IT and the business as possible. And if
Mhm.
you have to lean and select one side or the other, I lean towards the IT side because of the foundation and the need to get metadata and have them get a seat at the table and do the items in the tool. And then you want to bring the business and the regulatory compliance. But it should be a centrally, when you get to real big business, big governance, you want it to be as centrally located and driven from a team that has all of those components, best interests. Sometimes when I see that it's all being driven by IT, it's very one-sided.
Right.
And sometimes when it's all driven by business, they struggle because they need to get the mechanisms in place from IT.
Mhm.
So hopefully that was helpful, Jamie. It depends a lot on the organization, but absolutely wherever it can be driven. The other point I wanted to make with that is a lot of times you'll go into an organization and there are pockets of data governance that you can pull together into a central team, or
Right.
at least a central project team, and bring all those pockets together.
That's great. Thank you. All right, we've got a couple more questions here. We've got another one coming from Bethany as a follow-up to Stefan's. So she's explaining, she's getting challenged on targeting, let's see, LVL exec,
C-level
C-level
executives,
exec as
data
our
governance.
data governance sponsor. Since the entire organization will be involved, I feel it's important to have the sponsor in the C-suite to ensure the sufficient priority. Any suggestions on how
Yes.
to strengthen this?
How to strengthen that. And that's such an important component. I would have to say if there's anything, it's getting that executive level sponsorship. I
Mhm.
do want to say too that a lot of organizations are trying to get that data governance committee, the overarching committee, and they want all of the players in place on day one. There's a lot of components that we need to get together to say, how are we going to present this to the committee? What are our success metrics? And
Right.
I have gotten success by saying, you know what, we're going for that committee, but right now we're going to report up to John, and he's going to act as our entire data governance committee right now, so that we can start building what that's going to look like. And he's going to make the decisions and the accountability. He'll sign off on the charter, and then he's going to inspire that committee to grow out. And he's going to reach up to other executive sponsors and make sure that they understand what it is that he's doing. And that's worked out very well, because it's not so much we're trying at the lower, the frontline positions of the organization to get attention from the executive team. It's organically being inspired at that level.
Awesome. Hopefully that helps, Bethany. Um, let's see, we've got,
I
yeah.
did
what
see
he's
a
saying.
question there for from Chandon.
Yeah.
That illustrates the cost of inaction from banking and financial services industry. I talked a little bit about this earlier, Chandon. When you are a smaller bank, as you grow and you meet certain milestones of success, and hey, good for you. When you meet those milestones, you're going to be under new regulatory requirements.
Mhm.
If you have started your data governance, you will be able to move into those requirements in a much more elegant and sustainable way than if you don't have data governance in place. So you're going to want to make sure that you move that forward. And as you grow into those, they're also auditable now. So as you get more and more success, those regulatory items that you are answering, they're going to want to come in and say, where did you get this? Show me the entire life cycle. And they're going to want you to have that level of maturity in your organization so that that is fully auditable. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Chandon. All right, we got one last question here, it looks like, unless any trickle in at the end. This one comes from Caleb Adams. He asks, what are some examples of goals and metrics that can be used to measure success early into setting up a data governance framework?
Ooh, I love that. I actually have a presentation that Caleb, if you send their contact information and what I do for data governance, how successful it is. The first is how embedded in the ecosystem are we? And I have a PowerPoint presentation that says how many tables have we crawled and how many fields, servers, and so it's how embedded are you? How much code did you get in? Because it is an evolution. And the next one, I want to know how engaged are we in the tool? I want to know that we're using the tool, that we're advancing the items within the tool. The third one is how are we proving consistency? Because if we're not getting consistency, what are we doing? So show me how many terms are published and show me where you have actually modified your data assets in order to meet that policy of the term policy, if you will. But we're getting it from the right place now. The metrics have been applied and they're all consistent. So that is consistency. And then services. Data governance is a service to the organization. So show me how we are helping people with the engineering components of the tool, schema compares, impact analysis, moving data projects along using the project functionality, which I love in OvalEdge, by the way. So I have a group of 4 Power BI slides where I outline how I would gauge the success of my business intelligence team. And I also want to make a note here too. I have seen many organizations start very small with data governance. Mm-hmm. And by creating an effective roadmap, we've been able to have it grow from a grassroots beginning into a full-fledged program. And for those, I focus on highlighting and broadcasting the value, and there is a roadmap so that you can be successful no matter where you start. Just know that where you're starting from is going to have limitations on your capacity.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb, for that question. All right, we've got a couple more that are trickling in here. Awesome. Thank you guys for your engagement. This one comes from Sandy B. So, Sandy. If you set up a data governance office, how much should it be a part of the new processes established? For example, you set a new data access policy. Should each request be reviewed by the data governance office, or can it be other business or IT units responsible for it?
That's a phenomenal question. It does change between industries. Depends on your industry vertical. As the data governance office, I want to create transparency. I want to be able to onboard these different players into the tool so that they're all contributing to and drawing from the tool. Mm-hmm. But I am not necessarily the approver. I'm not trying to supplant or replace from an office perspective. Right. We're creating the conduit. We're bringing people into data as an asset. So let's say that there is a service ticket that we set up so anybody can report a sensitive data exposure, and it's going to run through the tool and go directly to the information security team. They hold the discipline for data security. So it is not necessarily, I will help you determine if everything on your report has been curated with high quality and it should then be ready to move to production. Post-curation, I will be able to say, hey, you guys, here's some inconsistencies. I'm putting this in your backlog. We need to decide on a term and get that term published. But I don't see wanting to, this is just me, you guys, there are other consultants and strategists that take a different perspective, that data governance is governing and you should be at your promotion stage and require and kick these things back. I don't think that their first off capacity and data governance team is always very limited. It always starts out very limited. So if we're spending our capacity in these areas, I don't think that it's going to be helpful in getting our program off the ground if that's where you're at.
Yeah.
I would say that there's plenty that business and IT are still going to maintain responsibility. We are maintaining responsibility for that transparency so that they understand the policy. And I also want to assist in identifying where you're not in compliance with that policy and then give it back to you so that you're in compliance.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy, for that. Okay, I think we've got one question, then we'll wrap up here. One last question. This one comes from Lene. Lene asks, when is it time to bring a tool like OvalEdge into your program?
Into your program?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. Sometimes I see that they bring the tool in and they're not ready for the tool. And then sometimes I see that they've got a fully formed data governance program built out in SharePoint and Excel. And I think, wow, we should have had a tool, a lot sooner than this. I tell a funny story. When I was at a conference 5 years ago, I went into my first session in Boston and the topic was, you don't need a tool to do data governance. And that was how it was presented from this team. And the very next session I went to, they started their opening comment with, you cannot do data governance without a tool.
Oh, wow.
So it's like this. I can write checks and I can make deposits. And I'm a very, very small company. Mm-hmm. And I can get away with this. And I spend every year at Christmas crying and rebuilding my stuff so that I can do my taxes at the end of the year. But I'm not buying buildings and I'm not. But if I wanted to add, let's say, a team of consultants, I can't afford anymore to be without a finance tool. Mm. I need to be able to move into having that sophistication. So right. I think that you need to figure out when you are ready to support the sophistication needed. Mm-hmm. I also want to say that if the two people that were in a department that bought OvalEdge that are using it for their metadata and lineage and nothing else, they're finding a lot of value out of that.
Right.
As well. So
it doesn't matter necessarily the size, right? It doesn't matter how many people you have involved, but more where you're at, what your goals are into the data governance.
Right. That's what I love about OvalEdge is because it's priced to meet where you're at with your goals mm-hmm. and grows with you as you move on. One of the best things I love to see in my job is when a program gets traction and then there's almost this tipping point where everybody is like, oh my gosh, we want to get in on that tool. I want to be next. And suddenly we've got so much coming at us that we're trying to keep up. And people are giving us their budget. They're giving us their budget because they want their stuff in the tool because they just saw this thing over here at the lunch and learn. And now they're ready to move on it. We're not ready to move with them because we have this charter document and the roadmap. So we need to make some adjustments. But that's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful when you see it actually take off and start getting traction and the light bulbs go on. A lot of companies that focus on that PR roadshow for data governance, the office hours, I say leverage as much of that as you can.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Even your point with the comparison with finance of, at some point, you're going to need some assistance to level up and get more sophisticated with that effort. So
exactly.
Great response. Thank you for your question, Lene, and everyone for joining our LinkedIn Live today. I think this was very helpful in even drilling down into the difference between, ROI and cost of inaction, talking about data as an asset, talking about tools with metadata at the center, like OvalEdge. I think we've gotten a lot of great insight from you today, Teresa. So I really appreciate your time and attention and insights. and everything that you've discussed with us today. Something that I wanted to mention as we close out here is, we have a blog with OvalEdge that one of our team members is going to drop into the comments section. This blog goes into a little bit more detail on some specific examples of cost of inaction if you want some information there. We also would encourage you guys to join us next time for our next OvalEdge LinkedIn Live. Please follow our page and come along. We try to have these monthly, and we look forward to having more conversation with you. Thank you guys again for all of your engagement. And if you'd like to see more of OvalEdge, feel free to reach out to us for a demo. We would love to meet with you and hear your specific pain points and goals and really work with you on helping you achieve that. So without further ado, or I guess I think this is time to, we'll say goodbye and we'll work on our Wordle.
Thanks. Yes, going to work on Wordle.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
Teresa.
everybody. Bye. That was fun.